Immortality. The tree of life itself is to be found here.
And of all the harm that I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of it, to my memory now I can't recall. So fail to me a parting glass, good night and joy be with you all. Of all the complaints that there I had, they're sorry now for my going away. And of all the sweethearts that I've had, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and softly call, good night and joy be with you all. A man may drink and not be drunk, a man may fight and not be slain, a man may court a pretty girl and perhaps be welcomed home again. But since it has so ordered been, a time to rise and a time to fall, fail to me a parting glass, good night and joy be with you all. So good night and joy be with you all.
So what is Empyreal? In a nutshell, Empyreal is a third-person action RPG about transcendental revelation. The game begins with your arrival on an unexplored planet to join an expedition that's discovered a monolith built by a lost ancient civilization. And so you are immediately presented with these grand questions. Why is it here? Who built it? What was its original purpose? And perhaps even what power might it still contain? And as you progress through the story, you'll explore themes and ideas about humanity's place in the cosmos. Some of these themes have largely fallen out of favour in the modern world, perhaps you could even say postmodern world. Things like duty, sacrifice, a tragic view of life, a sense of civilizational impetus, the idea that humanity is on a journey through history and that there is a meaning and purpose to that. And so as you uncover what this ancient civilization managed to achieve, the question you have to consider is whether this still has relevance to the modern world. Despite all of its technological advancements, has the modern world forgotten some things that are important to humanity's story? To begin your journey towards these discoveries, you will of course first need to make your character. We have a fairly extensive character creation. You can play as male or female, and there's quite a lot of customization options beyond that. When you're happy with how you look, then you select a background. So this is not a hugely important decision, honestly, because the equipment that you get as part of the background you choose is going to be replaced as you play the game, but it does give you a little bit of flavor to begin the game with. Once you finalize your character, you arrive in the hub to meet the rest of the expedition. Each member of the expedition has their own personal questline. All of these questlines have multiple endings, and it's even possible to fail them entirely. These quests each explore a different facet of the human condition, and this is based on the ideals of the individual themselves, the challenges they faced, and what they hope to ultimately achieve. But again, all revolving around this incredible discovery that the expedition has made. The gameplay of Empyreal is a mix of traditional third-person action and I would say isometric ARPG elements as well, in the way that abilities work in the game. The first thing to take note of is which weapon archetype you want to use, as this will have a big effect on your overall playstyle. Each weapon comes with its own core moveset, and they differ quite a lot from each other. You can change this later on, so it's not a class-based system. You pick up loot, and you can change your equipment, and that includes the weapon, which will change your core moveset. But in addition to that, and this is where those isometric ARPG elements come in, you equip abilities to your action bar. But you can only have a limited number of them equipped, so you equip 4 abilities, and in addition to that, an ultimate ability, but there are many, many more in the game. Choosing what abilities you like is a big part of making your build. Other aspects of character progression and making your build is of course finding new equipment, which is the main way to increase your stats or gain new stats. So there is a strong RPG aspect to the gameplay, but there are skill-based elements as well. You can do perfectly timed attacks, deflects, parries, and even some abilities have extra effects if they are perfectly timed. One of the most important and unique features of the game is something that we call cartograms. Cartograms are the levels that you play in the game, and you can almost think of these as a blueprint for some of the aspects that you're encountering in a level. I want to highlight that we don't do procedural level design. We do the level design by hand because we wanted to create all sorts of interesting details, shortcuts, hidden nooks and crannies, and things like that. But what enemies you face, what loot you can find, how many lives you get, what element you'll need a matching resistance to, all of these things and several more are randomly generated. So while the overall level layout is fixed, there'll be many ways in which each level is different depending on the attributes of the cartogram you're using to access it. One of the key things that is decided by the cartogram is the loot table of the boss, which means you can somewhat target the items that you're going for. There's still an element of chance to this. A boss might only drop 2 out of a possible 4 items in a loot table, as an example, but it does give you some ability to direct your playtime towards the goals and rewards that you have in mind. The last thing to note with cartograms is that you can actually share these with other players. So if you found a cartogram that had a really powerful item, you can share it with another player so they have a chance of getting it too. You could give it away or you could trade it. So there's a cooperative aspect which allows players to share the cool levels they find with each other. I think it's important to emphasize that Empyreal is a single-player game. It plays like a single-player game, but we do have a few asynchronous, cooperative, multiplayer elements that will allow you to just feel the presence of other players in the world as you play through it. And my personal favorite of these is a feature that we call Into the Ether. When you defeat a boss, you'll get this tear in the ether appear, and this is an opportunity for you to donate essentially gift an item from your inventory into the ether, and this will cause it to potentially appear in another player's game. And if it goes through this process, it will get a big increase to its stats. But there's no immediate direct reward for you doing this, which means it's really up to the players, in fact the community as a whole, to make it work. And I'm quite curious to see how, or even if, players engage with this feature. At Silent Games, though we are a small team, our ambition is to make feature-rich games that have a great deal of depth to them, both in terms of the mechanics, the combat, the RPG systems, but to the narrative as well, with themes that are thought-provoking and a detailed backstory to give context to the world and the universe. Our hope for this game is, maybe it almost sounds too obvious, but we hope players enjoy it for what it is, a single-player RPG experience with a thought-provoking story, with a lot of RPG mechanics and systems that you can really get stuck into, playing around with these systems to make interesting builds, and with a pretty substantial endgame to try those out in. If people play through the game, they enjoy that experience, they may be a bit surprised about the amount of depth there is to the game and the size of the endgame. We have a fully fleshed out New Game Plus, for example, with some features that are exclusive to New Game Plus even. So play through all of that and then leave happy, then we would consider that to be a big success. One of the things we were conscious of when creating this idea of a monolith is that we wanted to make sure there was still variety in there. So we did actually create 4 very distinct different biomes. These reflect certain almost philosophical principles of life, if you like, and each one, in terms of its art direction, is meant to kind of invoke certain feelings. You will also see some very unique areas which lead more towards the supernatural and divine aspects of the mysteries that this ancient civilization has uncovered.
So players will encounter lots of different enemy types within the monolith. So they are ancient automatons that are trying to protect areas in the different biomes, and they all have different styles of gameplay and all have different methods of defeating them.
This is sort of tied to the cartogram system. We put a lot of information up front in those cartograms, including what boss you'll face. And we also have something we call a dynamic difficulty indicator, which in real time takes into account your own power levels, such as the level of your character and what resistances you have, and compares that to the cartogram. It's just a loose indicator. It's not meant to be taken completely literally, but we do suggest which cartogram is maybe within your power level.
In Empyreal, there's 9 different characters, and each of them have their own unique backstories. So all of them have their own motivations and reasons for being there, and they all have different takes on what's happening inside the monolith.
I see the rumors were true.
Each of them is intended to be a very unique personality, and they've all had to sacrifice a great deal to be here, and they're all concerned about the future, and they're concerned about what they found.
It's very dangerous here. You shouldn't have come here.
Each of their quest lines have multiple endings depending on how you speak to them and what you do within the game. So it's gonna basically, everyone's end game can look quite different depending on how you've treated different characters.
What I hope is that players will resonate with these characters, that they will have their favorites. I mean, I'm probably biased, but I think they're one of the most interesting aspects of the game.
There are many, many things that I'm proud of with Empyreal, but I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is the amount of complexity that we've managed to add to the game in a positive way. So every time players will play, they will probably discover something new, or they will uncover a new feature.
I think the mystery is going to be one that's going to really excite players. This is a game that doesn't necessarily force feed information to the player. They're going to be rewarded for their curiosity.
Empyreal is a self-contained story, but the universe is very expansive. The people who belong in this world, including your player character, they know a lot about the history, they know a lot about the entities, about the civilizations, about the warring powers.
When you're creating any kind of new IP or any kind of RPG game world, you really need to think about the whole context of the world as well. So there is definitely scope for more in this universe, and we've definitely thought about how that could be utilized in the future.
think that what makes us really stand out is just the scope and depth of our features and mechanics, coupled with a narrative that is hopefully genuinely compelling and thought-provoking.
It's a very honest homage to RPG games with a nostalgic, traditional RPG feel, but there's also some new features like our asynchronous features that allow the community to come together and to foster connections inside the game as well as outside of the game. Players can trade items with each other, so I think that's quite exciting. There's a voice in the darkness, so you're able to give up something called a reset charge, which allows you to revive a player in another world after they have run out of their reset charges. So that can be quite a good feeling because it says player whoever has saved you from peril, basically. There's another feature called Into the Ether, which I really like, where you can throw an item into the ether and a player will get it on the other side, and then it will be ether touched, which gives it some additional kind of benefits. So yeah, there's lots of features that are cooperative, and I'm very curious to see what players do and if they choose to do that.
One of the most common items that players will want to trade between each other are the cartograms themselves. Cartograms are the levels that you play in the game, but these can be thought of as blueprints because they're actually items that you carry in your inventory and they drop from enemies. Each one comes imprinted with some randomized elements, which will make you have to think about how you approach it. As you progress through the game, you'll find a lot of sort of, if you like, loot, which is equipment that the player wears. The loot system is randomly generated from enemies, and we also have a crafting system in the game where you can reroll stats and you can move stats around to modify them just enough so that they improve to fit your build. As you play, you'll also be able to unlock new abilities, which is what the combat revolves around. Some of the abilities are actually tied to the ancient technology as opposed to the modern one.
Some of them are tied to the weapons, but there's also shared abilities that can be used with any build, and there's also an ultimate ability that you get later in the game.
You also want to be asking yourself, when using these abilities, what kind of damage do you want to be doing? So you may want to be selecting abilities that really lean into the elemental type of damage that your weapon does. If you have a frost-based weapon, for instance, you'll be choosing abilities that have frost-based damage or inherit that damage from the weapon.
Each different cartogram will have different ways that it needs to be solved. So the point is to be able to create different builds and to allow players to have that level of complexity and that layer of theory craft in their build. But then also it does require some sense of mastery, like some of the skills require perfect timing, parries and dodges. So there's also that aspect to it.
There's a lot of opportunity for players to really play their way. And I think they're really going to enjoy it.
Empyreal is a sci-fi fantasy action RPG. I call it sci-fi fantasy because the setting is sci-fi, but I think the mood and feel is more fantasy.
You are a mercenary and you've come to this unexplored planet. There is this huge monolith in the center, and there's been an expedition that's already tried to figure out what's going on, but they have so far not got very far with it.
They've been trying to explore this monolith that's been built by a lost ancient civilization, and it becomes clear that this civilization has made discoveries that are unknown to the modern world.
Players can choose a weapon at the start of the game, but they're not locked into that. They can change once they pick up a new weapon, and they can experiment with different play styles. You can also customize your character, so you can make it however you want. There's lots of customization options, and I think there's a lot of variety there for players to explore.
And then beyond just the visual customization of your actual physical appearance, you can customize it with armor sets, and we have dozens of different visual assets for those as well. And then you can customize it with your playstyle. We have, I think, about 50 different abilities, hundreds of stats in the game. I would say, in summary, it's a true RPG. It's meant to be explored to that level of depth. The combat revolves around 3 different weapon archetypes. So we have a glaive, cannon, mace, shield, and they all play very differently. Just by equipping the weapon, you will get different moves, and you'll get a completely different feel.
Once you've chosen your weapon archetype, you want to be selecting your abilities as well. So you have several choices of abilities to make. Some are specific to the weapons, and some are shared.
And then you have ultimate abilities, which require energy to build up. We have sort of a camera cut, so you get the spectacular, explosive kind of aspect of the combat as well.
There are thousands and thousands of possibilities for creating your build. You could create something basically entirely unique.
You can only change your loadout when you're in sort of the safe central hub zone area of the game. But if you find that for whatever reason a particular level doesn't seem to fit with the build that you've made, then you can change that and try again.
So in terms of stuff that players haven't seen, there is a lot because we've only put out a couple of trailers, so there's tons and tons of content. Particularly for a small studio, we've created a game that's very, very ambitious.
The challenge is making all those elements come together in one big, satisfying game that's going to reward curiosity. I think we've conquered that, to be honest.
I can't imagine what possessed you to agree to this mission.
As for the answers you seek, I can only set you on the path.
The final secrets of existence and non-existence transfix mankind with monstrous eyes.
We are to witness the divine, you and I.
May the God of heaven inspire your heart with peculiar determination. Come the day that you must face the truth of our world.
As for the answers you seek, I can only set you on the path.